Totally.
All right, I am thrilled to be relaunching SpartyCast with one of my good friends, one of my favorite collaborators, an awesome person in general, Dr. Andrew Gambino. Welcome to SpartyCast.
Thank you for that great introduction, Dr. Tam. It's so great to be here talking about ChatGPT.
Yeah, ChatGPT, Bard, social AI, all the all the names. There's so many, right? Have you been keeping up on the news, or I mean, what's the latest that's hit your radar?
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you're in an academic department, especially one that is social scientific or humanities oriented, you are very up on the news. We've had meetings about it in our department. We've had a lot of coverage just thinking about how to, work with it in the classroom and at least understand how students are going to use it. So that's been a pretty
Yeah,
big part of our life, actually.
from the teaching perspective, right? It's complicating things. Students using these tools to write their papers or otherwise feign productivity.
Can you tell? Like, I don't think I can tell yet, other than that they would be like very good assignments or very good papers. That'd be the best way that I could tell.
Yeah, no, I can't tell. So we have a policy, at least I've put one in my syllabus, that if they use it, they have to cite it in the same way that they would cite another source. And I would expect most of them to hold to that. Hold on, I didn't introduce you properly though. So Andrew is an assistant professor, newly joined at the University of Delaware. Your PhD is from Penn State. You spent a little bit of time in between that PhD and your current gig at the, say the name for me properly, so I don't,
Hong Kong Baptist University.
Hong Kong Baptist University. I didn't want to butcher that. And and so we've known each other for a while since we started talking about, this is, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years ago. We started talking about avatar type
Yeah,
research.
yeah, I guess that's true. I feel like knew each other from conferences and Jamie and Nick's thing, their book
Yeah,
thing. This was doing it for a while, and
Jamie Banks, Nick Bowman, both great video games researchers. So we've worked in the same circles. And Andrew and I have been working on I would call it a theory at this point. I don't feel like I'm overselling it.
hopefully someday.
Hopefully someday. That's why it's a theory. It's taken so damn long to develop. But we're literally 6 studies in, like 6 unpublished studies into testing this idea um, about the way that people interact with media and interact socially with media, which, we are building off of the media equation. So, Andrew, what is the media equation?
Well, I think that when the premise for this podcast was that everybody does seem to be very surprised by how they like ChatGPT. But if we just draw on our great social scientific theory, the media equation by Byron Reeves and Cliff Nass, we would know that we tend to treat media like we do people. So, of course, this fantastic conversational AI of ChatGPT is very engaging to us because we like to be social and conversational ourselves. And really, I think that's the main premise. Like anything we do in real life, we're going to like to do with media. We're going to apply those same stereotypes, scripts, and schema to our interactions with media technologies.
Absolutely. So we're just following those same patterns of social interaction when we interact with media. Um, ready for the most embarrassing confession of the day here. So we've known the media equation our whole academic careers, right? You know it as well as anyone in the field. And I thought I did too. And then this last quarter, so I'm still at MSU, but I taught a class at Stanford, and I taught an intro comm class, the class that I took back when I was a master's student, and we taught the
Ooh.
media equation theory. And that's actually one of the reasons I was so inspired to work on this podcast episode with you. So we taught the media equation theory, and then we talked about CASA. And my students were asking me, well, what's the difference between the media equation theory and CASA? And I had never really sat down to think about it. And the easiest way I can explain it, and then tell me if you agree with this, Andrew. I don't want to put you on the spot and ask you to define it without a moment to reflect here is the media equation theory is broader. It applies to televisions and radio and any sort of like mediated communication channel, whereas CASA stands for computers as social actors. So it's limited to artificial agents. Would you agree with that?
I would, and I think that, I mean, I could be totally wrong here, but I believe part of the premise between Byron and Cliff was that they've flipped a coin about whether it's going to be called the media equation and apply to all media or computers as social actors, which is what's it called?
From the beginning, they flipped a
Yeah,
coin.
I think they flipped a coin for the title of the book, and that's why it was the media equation.
No,
No.
I heard the story that they flipped a coin on authorship order.
Oh, maybe it's that too, but I think they both go hand in hand. Byron's more entertainment media, and then Cliff is computers.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so in a way, I mean, despite both of us feeling a close affinity for the media equation as it is kind of the foundational theory on which we've built some of our work, it's really CASA that we engage with directly, right? Computers
Yeah,
as social actors theory.
I think so. But I mean, honestly, like, if I'm going to read about CASA, I'll probably read the media equation book and obviously Cliff's book too. And when I want to review so many papers based on this topic, I see it. I see them both used still, like pretty
Yeah.
interchangeable.
Pretty
So
interchangeably, but probably inaccurately interchangeably, right? Like if
perhaps so.
yeah, if you say the media equation is what describes computers, people responding to computers the same way they respond to people, you think it's on your team, you like it more. It's polite to you, you're polite back. You like it more. You have to rate it. You're more polite or sorry, you're more critical if you're not rating right to its face. If you say that's the media equation, you're right, but it's not as accurate as saying that's CASA. That's the CASA paradigm.
Yeah, I think so. Especially because after the book and then those original studies, there's way more work that Cliff did on computers. So I think narrowing the scope is probably more accurate too.
Yeah, yeah. So that's something I'd like to do in our work. And then so narrowing the scope as we move forward as a field, but also recognizing that things have changed. So what is the premise of that paper that that you led with Jesse Fox and then I called Building a Stronger CASA?
Yeah, basically just trying to locate the foundational principle of CASA, which is, I think, essentially the mindless application of social scripts or cognitive schema to our interactions to sort of guide them. And then thinking about how we use computers and use technologies so much so in our lives and how we are pretty adept users of those technologies. So most likely, we have come up with ways to generally better navigate using those technologies based off our previous experiences with them. And I think that taking into account those types of new models that we have built for interacting with technology is a good way to sort of expand the research a little bit. If nothing else, give us a few more things to look at in terms of CASA rather than just sort of the same principles that really have been almost proven at this point by Cliff and all the Stanford researchers. So I think it just gives a little bit of fresh air to say that we changed a little bit with computers because computers have changed so much and they're so integrated into our lives, but we still have the same principle of really basing our actions off of these sort of social scripts or cognitive heuristics to guide our actions and make them kind of to be very efficient in that sense. Help us
Yeah.
navigate the world with computers.
Yeah, so social scripts. So kind of the formula that you follow for interacting with people. But now we've got different scripts for different computer mediated communication or interactions with computers. So what are a few different, like, of course, in the early days when we were talking to computers and asking for, information on from a website or maybe a personal mobile device, a Palm Pilot back in the days of the early media equation research. How have our scripts changed since then? What are some examples that we can use to make this more concrete?
I mean, I think they're just a lot more sophisticated. And honestly, like trying to figure out the exact scripts has been quite a challenge, especially because the technologies do change so much. So I can definitely say when I was thinking of like the original idea for it, just the idea that people do generally tend to understand that they're talking to a computer if we're doing things like when we all get on those phones, customer service like interactions, we do tend to like want to deduce whether it's a computer or human, even if it's just a chat thing or over voice on a phone. And when we find out it's a computer, I do think we respond to it by generally trying to make ourselves more understandable to the computer. We might try and like modulate our voice so that is understandable, or we try to use certain keywords in like our chat queries to make sure that the chat agent can pick up on those things. And obviously we wouldn't naturally do those things with a human. We would certainly have some keywords or buzzwords, but we would essentially give them a little bit more we'd give them a little more credit that they'd be able to figure out what we're talking about. And because we do make some of these changes to our behaviors with computers, it does seem to me that there is some evidence that we have made these sort of scripts and heuristics to better navigate those interactions. Even if it's just something simple like trying to tell someone they did a terrible job or trying to get a refund for our bank purchases, we have these ways of navigating those interactions to make sure we're understood by the computer to some degree.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. So when we communicate with people, we might have like a folk psychological mental model of what this person is thinking when I speak to them. So then I say the thing in the way that I might say it to myself because I expect you to understand what I would understand. But when I'm speaking to a computer, my mental model of what the computer understands is maybe like how I think of communicating with a child,
Yeah.
or how I think of communicating with someone when we're not speaking the same language fluently. And so we have to be very careful in our word choice, or other forms of communication. So those are the different scripts that we might follow.
Yeah, different scripts, and it's just a way of knowing the level of sophistication. Like we're of course very good at identifying that as communicators, and I think it's a little obvious that of course we would attune like even our level of sophistication to a computer or a computer agent based on what's worked before. So we of course we get more simple in our talking and our language use and our vernacular, and also we try to be more direct and avoid things avoid avoid things that are unnecessary, I would say, in those types of interactions, because we know they're not going to be picked up or the context is not going to be understood.
Yeah. Awesome. So we've got a good foundation here. We've covered kind of the media equation to CASA to the modern day where people still do interact with computers the way they interact with people, but with maybe some slightly different modifications on the social scripts that we use. And of course, the computers are speaking more like people, and the more anthropomorphic they are, the more we're likely to use regular human scripts. So research supports all that. So now let's get to ChatGPT or social AI, or Google's Bard, which I just started trying recently. And I noticed one interesting thing, and to give me your take on this. When you type a query into ChatGPT, you get a response line by line, and
Word
it
by
kind
word
of
sometimes, yeah.
word by word. It seems like it's thinking, right?
That's a really good point. There's a student in my program, PhD student Liam, who is, I think, interested in looking at that exact phenomena of what we sort of think the computer's doing when it's figuring out the next word to populate its string there.
But my question is, I wonder if it's really actually taking a moment to think about the next word, or like is that a processing efficiency mechanism, or is it just pure artifice to make it feel like you're talking to a person?
Wouldn't it be
Because
the best if it was the last one?
when I use Bard, there's no pause.
Oh, really?
So like why I'm gonna type in, are you seeing my screen right now?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So why does Chat GPT pause as it replies to questions? All right, and you can see there's just thinking bubbles here, and then boom, wall of text. Um, Large language model trained on a massive data set. So it's funny. This is Bard telling us how, and so Bard is arguing that it's actually it's actually taking a moment to compute.
I believe that could be true. I wonder if it does actually compute. I mean, I know it works by figuring out the most probable next word all the time. So maybe it is actually propagating each word in the string. But I love the idea that it could like totally be for artificial in that sense, because that would really just speak to how much we care about those social factors and these chat AI spaces. Like we need it to give us some social cue there. It's great.
Absolutely. It would also speak to the designers of this system to to like how clever they were in
Very savvy. That is
yeah,
the
so here,
yeah.
like it shows us the cursor as if it's typing. It's not typing. Obviously, it's not typing. Like
It's
here it
obviously
is.
not typing, but it does look like it's typing. And like we know how that works from CMC. Like it makes sense that we would like that a little bit better. I think like it does seem
Exactly.
engaging.
Exactly. Like I was immediately put off by Bard's wall of text. I felt like it was a web query and not a social agent, which is just one little detail.
I mean that's a huge detail. Whatever, if anything, can make something more engaging. It's so worth it for all these companies to really follow that model. I would say, like, but yeah, my student was telling me that his father thinks that he likes the pauses. It seems like makes ChatGPT like it's thinking in the moment. Like it's we can't help but anthropomorphize. It's pretty great.
Exactly, exactly. So let's come up with some questions that can help us. I like this idea of comparing ChatGPT and Bard. And by the way, as I said before, the best plan is no plan when it comes to this recording. So this wasn't my original plan, but I think this would be really fun. Let's compare some queries and
Mm.
let's see which of the two feels more anthropomorphic.
Uh-huh.
And
Okay.
and then yeah, let's try to analyze it from a CASA perspective.
All right. I like it. I was
So we
Bard. Oh, let's see. What is a good query that would give the
we could ask them both which they think is more anthropomorphic.
that's good.
So is Chat GPT or Bard more anthropomorphic? And let's ask, of course, both. Let's see. Let's see who starts giving us an answer first. Waiting. Okay, ChatGPT coming through with an answer a little bit faster. Oh, but no, I mean, Bard gets to the end before
Yeah.
ChatGPT does. Um, so AI, however, the level of anthropomorphism depends on various factors such as type of training data set, quality of training, size of the model. Bard is an A language, share some similarities. Oh, so ChatGPT is giving it to Bard. Because Bard might have more cultural references, idiomatic
Huh.
expressions, or other nuances of language that are specific.
Ah.
Okay, and let's see what Bard says. Oh, they're both very
Oh.
polite. Bard says that ChatGPT is more anthropomorphic. I love it. That's so funny. Um,
Human like language. I guess that's true.
okay. How can we test that?
So one of the I've been having trouble thinking of ways to operationalize a lot of these constructs in the actual removing them from the chat GPT context because I mean we don't have sophisticated large language model chatbots, so it's difficult to control these things. But I would be curious, at least in terms of just basic things like uh, yeah, from a user experience standpoint, whether or not that pausing and that cursor do lead to higher sense of higher sense of anthropomorphism. I feel
Yeah.
like they would. Um, it seems compelling to me. I don't know if that's the reason why people would use ChatGPT, but it does seem to make it more human-like to me.
Yeah, so interface features.
Yeah.
Is there
Let's,
anything else in this interface that we might feel is more oh, that's so I can hit
oh,
regenerate response. The ability to up or down vote a response um makes it feel less anthropomorphic to me.
ah, let's see. Oh, that's a different answer?
Yep, yep. So second answer from Bard is that neither of them are anthropomorphic.
Oh, wow, that's like
Um,
Cliff Nass definition of anthropomorphism. Has to actually be human almost.
yeah, yeah. Well, just because they're not anthropomorphic, they can still be perceived as anthropomorphic.
Can be definitely they allow us to
I mean,
anthropomorphize.
that is the meat equation right here. So what is the regenerated response here from ChatGPT? It's much longer.
Hmm.
Um, it's a bit more sophisticated, I think.
Oh, this is a similar thing. Not truly anthropomorphic.
Yeah, exactly. They're simply processing information. So it's funny, their first answer like placed a stake in the ground, and it was the polite stake in the ground, right? Or that's how we would perceive it if we,
Mm.
because we are anthropomorphizing them. Um, but then the second response for both of them is kind of like neutral. There is no winner.
Yeah, not going too far out. Yeah, it, I do wonder about like some of the interface features, like this one. I don't know what it does user experience wise. Do you think it takes people out of the experience? That'd be interesting to know.
Well, the more it requires kind of interactions that I associate with a pure information interface, right? As opposed to a CMC interface.
Yeah, like I do wonder. I feel like I haven't seen research on it, but it seems to make sense. Like if you have a social cue that essentially cues you to the asocial nature of the platform or the information nature of the platform, does it like take you out of that media equation or computer to social active mindset? It seems like it should. Like it's
Yeah,
a non-interactive, non like human interaction cue. It might make you realize that you're engaging with the computer.
absolutely. Um, and I mean, fundamentally, we're interacting through text, which we know people respond socially to because of that research from Cliff and Byron. But we also know they respond more socially to voice.
Right.
And I'm
But
I'm I'm a bit surprised that there's no simple plugin to have these things read to you. There's an app you can download and like pay for a subscription. I forget what it's called, and I wouldn't want to advertise it anyway. But like Google can turn everything that they do into a Google Voice prompt and kind of interaction. So will Bard run Hey Google eventually?
I wonder, as I mean, I had invested so much resources of my like life into thinking about virtual assistants, and now it seems like virtual assistants may just go away to some degree because they're not as sophisticated as ChatGPT.
Why would they go away though? Why wouldn't they just become them?
Yeah, yeah, they might. I mean, they might be subsumed by a voice interaction interface. I don't know. Maybe we there's some reason we like text though for some of these things, or just like finding out not trivial pieces of information, but like things we do in like search. Like if anything, I feel like it'll replace search, and there'll be more sophisticated virtual agents. But I think there are maybe, even though there's more presence for voice interaction, there's probably some things we like to do by text.
Hmm. Okay. Um, yeah, maybe. I think so. I mean, text is certainly efficient um in so many ways. So I thought of a prompt here. You ready?
Mhm. Mhm.
Write me a short, should we say poem or story or just essay, convincing me that you're human.
Yeah, write me a short, yeah, story could work.
Convincing me that you are human. So let's see. Bard and now I wonder if it understands the word you
It has to. Yeah,
to
it has.
be it. Huh. Once upon a time there was a little girl who always had been curious about the world around her. Oh wait, hold on. We should um wait. Okay. Here's this. Okay, sorry for my stumbling here. So it's funny. ChatGPT jumps right into it, writing this story.
No.
Whereas Bard, like, writes a preface. I am a
Yeah.
chatbot. I am not human, but I can be convincing. They're like, wait a minute. We don't want to lead you down, but I'm still underdeveloped, but I'm learning new things every day. I hope that one day I'll be able to convince you I'm human. Here's a short story that might convince you I'm a human. Okay, hold on. Wait, before we read this, I'm going to share my sound and then I'm going to text to speech this. Let's hope that Speechify does not, come on, some system that doesn't make me pay, please, is nuance free. If this weren't a consistent, an unplanned, will this run? Will this run? Will this run? Here we go.
We're good.
I was walking down the street when I saw a little girl crying. I asked her what was wrong, and she told me that she had lost her dog. I helped her look for her dog, and we eventually found him hiding under a car. The little girl was so happy to see her dog, and she thanked me profusely. I felt good about helping the little girl, and I realized that I was capable of empathy and compassion. I believe that my ability to empathize and feel compassion is what makes me human. Humans are social creatures, and we rely on each other for support and understanding. I am able to understand the feelings of others, and I am able to help them when they are in need. I believe that this is what makes me human.
But you can't walk down the street.
It's not too convincing. I don't know. That's from Bard? Okay.
That was Bard. All right, here we go with ChatGPTs. Let's see.
Once upon a time, there was a little girl who had always been curious about the world around her. One day, she stumbled upon a chatbot named ChatGPT and asked it if it was human. ChatGPT replied with a well-crafted response, but the little girl still wasn't convinced. So, ChatGPT decided to tell her a story to show that it was human. It told her about a time when it was a child, just like her, and it loved to play in the park. ChatGPT described how it would run around and play with its friends, chasing after butterflies and picking wildflowers. The little girl listened intently, and as ChatGPT continued to share stories about its life, she began to realize that there was something uniquely human about them. She could feel the emotion and the personality behind the words, and she realized that this chatbot was more than just a machine spitting out pre-written responses. As the conversation came to an end, the little girl smiled and thanked ChatGPT for sharing its stories. She had come to see that this AI language model was capable of
Okay, that's pretty
That was
good.
pretty good.
Yeah.
Let's finish it.
capable of expressing itself in a way that felt truly human, with all the quirks and idiosyncrasies that come with being a unique individual. She left the conversation feeling enriched and satisfied, with a newfound appreciation for the complexity of AI technology.
Uh-huh. Pretty
Are we
good.
are we convinced ChatGPT is more human than than Bard?
I do think it does seem to do a better job with the responses being extremely sophisticated and human-like in conversation. I do
Yeah.
think.
Yeah. Um I think so too. I mean, oh, sorry, I stopped sharing my screen because I kind of wanted to just focus on talking. But I regenerated the answer from Bard to see if it would do any better. Give it one more try. Nope, nope. It still clearly has a very cautious engineering team that has some sort of cue, which is like when you're trying to convince people you're human, like, give some sort of preface. So there's a preface, and then it doesn't really do anything besides saying, yeah, I need to convince you that I have emotions.
They're really into the prefaces on Bard there, making
I
sure
guess
that
so. Well, more lawyers, more to lose over at Google than OpenAI, I imagine.
oh, that's Google's. Oh my God.
Yeah, yeah.
All gonna be, yeah. Let's see. I do wonder. I mean, I've read a lot of articles on how it's going to change work for people. I'm very curious about it. I'm excited to see it play out.
In what ways do you think it'll change work?
So I was reading in MIT Tech Review. Basically, when you use ChatGPT as like an assistant or something to help you with work, it can really close the gap of like more highly skilled, highly trained workers to more of like a lower trained workforce with all that expertise and knowledge at its disposal can get a lot of the work done and close that gap considerably, which I don't know, may not be great for a lot of our sectors.
Yeah, you mean those of us who are highly skilled in in like APA formatting?
That's right. We could definitely, if someone was an APA like tutor or editor, could definitely put you out of business for sure. That is something
Interesting.
you can do very well.
But the common story of the Luddites struggle is that these new technologies displace jobs, but then they create many more. Um, so so do you think like working with AI will be a skill that is, I don't know, valued in the workforce?
I do, especially if it, and that's one study, but if that result bears out across multiple studies where you can essentially, without necessarily training your workforce, like have them get way more skillful and way increased output, I think it will absolutely be a skill that's needed at that point. Like we're training our students to probably have to be able to use that if they're going to be an entry level job where they don't have the highest amount of training yet. They can close that gap pretty quickly. I think employers will definitely want that
Yeah.
everywhere. You can't make up productivity like that. Like, there's no other way to do it other than invest in serious resources.
Yeah, yeah. So then here's a thesis for you, and tell me what you think. I've never thought this idea, at least in these terms yet, but I think it makes sense. So, the idea of seeing through the matrix, it's like
It's seen through the matrix.
seeing through the matrix, right? Like you see the code, but like you don't actually you're not even looking at what's on the surface. You kind of see what's underneath, right? You can just perceive beyond the illusion of the technology. So maybe that's a metaphor, or I don't know, less than a metaphor, um, for the way that people might interact with media technologies. We know there are individual differences in the extent to which people respond socially, right? Not everyone is the same CASA, has the same CASA effect as others. There's a normal distribution. So the people who respond less socially, here's my thesis. The people who respond less socially to AI will be better at understanding what the technology can do. They see through the matrix, and thus they will be more marketable and valuable in future workplaces because they don't need to spend the time to be polite to communicate with the chat GPT. They're not convinced that it has emotions. They just get right to, what can this thing do in this job in this moment? What do you think? Convincing or not?
I think it's pretty convincing. It's definitely one of the skills that would be you'd want someone to have because other than yeah being able to work with it better and more efficiently, it would also be the first a person like that would probably be best at identifying when it's appropriate to use ChatGPT and when it's appropriate to use any large language model and know sort of like the same way, like when we're looking for help with something, like if we go to like Stat Exchange or something, or MATLAB, like some of the answers aren't so great, but we have to have that like hunch in the back of your mind that's like, this is something that's extremely difficult. This is something that people have a lot of misunderstanding about, to really be able to know if you can use the resource or not. I think ChatGPT or any large language model will have the same sort of gaps and holes because it's drawing from those same sort of databases, and it can sound very confident. So if you do respond socially to that confidence, it's going to be sometimes problematic when we should be a little more skeptical at times, especially with the information it's giving us.
Yeah, interesting. So perhaps a somewhat ironic conclusion of our journey here is to be wary of CASA in this era of social AI.
Yeah, I think absolutely we should. Whenever we're doing things that are, if we take a step back, are clearly not necessarily inappropriate, but incongruent at the least, we always have to be wary of that, because it can get us in some strange places, especially when we let the mindlessness drive the bus a little bit too much.
Don't let the mindlessness drive the bus. The mindlessness is a pigeon. Do you get that reference, Andrew? Do you
I
spend
do
time
not.
with 3-year-olds? Okay. There's this great book and series by Mo Willems, children's author, that says "Don't let the pigeon drive." The title is "Don't let the pigeon drive the bus." He also wrote the Elephant and Piggy series, which are like extremely philosophically rich children's books that are hilarious and super easy to consume. Don't let the mindlessness drive the bus is kind of the same idea in some ways, right? The pigeon is maybe not the brightest of the animals in the animal kingdom. And in this particular story, the pigeon really wants to drive the bus. The problem is that people often let the pigeon drive the bus of their minds, that mindless kind of automatic response. Um, so, yeah, recognizing that these social responses are the pigeon trying to drive your bus. Don't let that pigeon all up in your bus.
Yeah, got to be critical. I like seeing through the matrix though. Like, it would help a lot, but it's too much work probably to educate undergraduates on what's going on, at least in our like discipline, what's going on in large language models. Just way too much overwhelming math going on there.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe not in a media and info or information science major or communication major, but with a bit of computer science, at least you can probably, and even in those majors, you can probably get the high level theory of how it's working, right?
Yeah, that's probably true too. It would definitely help. Maybe in my next class I can do that.
Yeah. Awesome. So let's wrap up here. And I don't know, where should we go next with all of these inquiries, Andrew, or where are you going to go next in your kind of research related to these topics?
Oh yeah. So the one thing I've been really playing around with, is it pertains to these actual like large language models, is working with them. And I think there's an actual gap for once. I think there's an actual gap in terms of not only it's like an output gap in terms of how you feel about something you make when using something like a large language model as an assistant or helping you put together or come to an answer, versus how your audience perceives you when you use that large language model to maybe come to an answer or put out some work. So hopefully do some early experiments and stuff and see how people feel when they produce work with the AI, how then people rate those outputs, and then how people rate them when they know that they produce with the AI, to see how our sort of where we fall and the differences between how we feel we're doing versus how we're actually presenting ourselves.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, that's interesting. So kind of psychological responses to large language models, and the work that gets produced.
Yeah, I think the actual application. So like when we do work, when we get answers, when we need help, like of course, do we metacognitively feel smarter, and then how do other people sort of feel about us doing that?
Yeah. Oh, interesting. Interesting. Yeah, I like that. I like that very much. So how long until we need to start doing the whole like prepare for resisting your robot overlords research? What do you think?
I don't know. Like, I don't think anyone actually knows the answer to that question. We'll see. We'll see what the actual concerns are. There should be some. I don't think there. I like Yann LeCun, the like godfather of modern neural nets. He doesn't think it's a problem because there's no dominance. Like AI trained net doesn't have any sense of dominance like maybe humans do, like evolutionarily evolved to at least dominate other species for their well-being, but AI won't have that. It'll just be maybe really, really insightful or really sharp, really good at calculations, but not necessarily need to dominate other things.
Mm.
So he's not
So,
concerned.
so, I guess robot overlords is a different way of framing it that implies dominance, and so maybe it's just robot lords.
What
Like
about words? Huh?
people worshiping these AI models, like you said, really insightful. Like they'll be the wisest oracles of our day, and they'll tell us stories about how they convince us that they can feel emotions. And then people will worship them. I wonder if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I guess it's a good thing if it helps them be productive.
Yeah. So my other great mentor, the great Autumn Edwards, has an interesting thought on this. I think you might like it. Just that it would be the first time in history at some point, like probably soon, that you can have one communicator communicating to just a ton of different people. One chat GPT or one bot, one other language model that becomes like big, is be able to spread like their own word or gospel to just an entire audience of people at the same time for really the first time like ever. Like that could actually be a possibility, and not only just communicate one message like in a printing press or mass comm message, but also interact in real time with presumably one maybe concrete personality type thing driving it. So it'll be interesting to see, like maybe there will be like some degree of worship that goes on to these amazing agents that are with us all the time, can interact with us all the time, and interact similarly, give a similar experience to millions and millions of people.
Be afraid. Now, I pulled out over from the lords, to respond to what you said earlier. But then what you're saying now, to have that one communicator managing the message, that's a lot of power. And governments and companies aren't going to ignore that potential, which means like it's ripe for competition, and the winner will take maybe not all, but quite a lot.
Winner should take quite a lot.
Yikes. All right. Well, on that terrifying, pessimistic note, let's end this amazing reunification of Gambino and Rattan. And I look forward to doing more research with you and maybe having you back on the podcast. I could see this as kind of a regular topic to hit up.
But be always happy to see you, man. Talk research, talk cool things, and let's hope we get some good luck the next few cycles here.
Awesome. Well, thanks to whoever tuned in for this relaunch of SpartyCast. Hope you enjoyed. Shoot Andrew or I an email if you have any questions. How about both of us? And we'll gladly respond, because you are the few and brave who made it to the end. All right. I'm gonna hit pause here.